Good morning. We are back with the story. We're doing it a little different today because we were a little short on time, so we thought we'd just try to record it audio. Let's see here. We are on page 16 of the story, and we were with Hagar. And we were talking about Hagar and Sarai. I want to we'll go back and review later, but let's just start with Hagar. Okay. Hagar would be a surrogate mother for the promised child. And that's not really what it was. A surrogate mother makes it seem kind of nice, like she's like, "Oh, I'll carry your child for you." No, they made her. It wasn't a choice for Hagar, and that's called abuse. After Hagar conceived, she and Sarai quarreled, and Hagar was sent away. It wasn't, and see, I don't like the wording of that either. Hagar was sent away. It kind of makes it seem like there wasn't a lot going on. No, Sarai was hateful to Hagar, and she kicked her out of the house, of the tent, of their little area where they lived. That's what happened. Now, Hagar had to go wander in the wilderness, helpless and pregnant. A woman is very vulnerable when she's pregnant, and to send her out into the wilderness while she's pregnant is just hateful to the max.
Wait, she was pregnant? I'm sure she had already... Oh, right.
She went 2 times to the wilderness. Once while she was pregnant, and then once for good with Ishmael. But right now, she's just pregnant. She was despairing for her life, meaning she's like, I don't know how I can go on. She's just very distraught. And right at that moment, God spoke to her, and God met her. Teresa, it's a little too loud. She was in distress, and I just want to hover here for a minute because God loved Hagar. And a lot of times we look at the story and we say, well, if Abraham and Sarah would not have, tried to fulfill God's promise in their own strength, this wouldn't have happened. This is just what happens when you enter in sin, because when you love another woman like your wife, that's not your wife, that's sin. And it's a big deal. It's not a small deal. Our culture kind of makes it seem like it's not really a big deal to love each other like husband and wife when you're not. But what did the Lord say is the purpose of loving each other like husband and wife? To become...
husband and wife.
No, one flesh. And the two shall become one flesh. Well, the purpose is to worship God and to be one through God. But you become one flesh. And that's no small thing. You're joining 2 people into one. And so when you treat that like it's a small thing, it can do a lot of damage in your soul. And your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. So anyway, I say all that to say, it wasn't a small thing what Abraham and Sarah made Hagar do. I wanted to make sure that we understood. Y'all are being too loud. Sit down on the floor, please. That God loved Hagar. Because I think that part is missed a lot. We kind of dismiss Hagar as, the servant girl. But God loved her. The angel of the Lord met Hagar and told Hagar, go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. Now, this is a very similar promise to the promise that God gave to Abraham. So now he's giving it to Hagar, which a lot of people don't mention either, is that God is giving these promises to Hagar also. He loves Hagar. But the instruction is to go back and submit. That's a difficult thing for Hagar, because Hagar is not in the wrong. Hagar did nothing wrong, and she's got to go back to these people who've mistreated her, particularly Sarah, And she's got to go back and submit.
Sarai.
Yeah, Sarai. Her name is Sarai right now, but it's hard for me to kind of flip-flop back and forth, so sometimes I just call them Abraham and Sarah. It's hard for her to go back and submit to these people who have been hateful to her. The angel of the Lord also said, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." And then this is what Hagar responds back to the Lord. She said, "You are the God who sees me. I have now seen the one who sees me." And that is why the well was called Beer Lahai Roy. It's still there between Kadesh and Bered. So what I think is interesting to point out is that, do you notice the angel tells Hagar to name her son Ishmael, and what does the angel say about Ishmael?
That he's going to be hostile to all of his brothers.
And then Hagar responds with a good response. "This is the God who's seen me. He loves me." To be seen is to be loved. When somebody sees you, they don't just see, they see you, your person. To be seen is to be loved. And she said, "This is the one who loves me." Isn't that a weird response? He said, "I'm going to give you a son. His name's going to be Ishmael, and he's going to be against all his brothers." She's like, "You've seen me. You love me." That's a weird response, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But it's because the Lord is giving her a promise here. And even though he's asking her to do something hard, to go back and submit to Sarah, to name him Ishmael and say he will be against his brothers, but he's given her a promise that her descendants would be like the stars, just like he said to Abraham. There will be so many you can't even count them. But it's not right here. But what he also promised was, he said, "I'll be with you," and he's with her right now. And this is the promise that speaks to her. And the thing is, who else was against his brothers? Jesus. We don't often pick out that little tidbit because we don't compare Ishmael to Jesus a lot, because we think, oh, well, Ishmael is not like Jesus at all. But he is. He gives us a part of the picture of Jesus. And the part of the picture is, as we'll see later, that Ishmael gets kicked out of the house and sent off to basically for for a literal death, but kind of like go away as if you're not here, so that Isaac can inherit.
I know, I remember they were trying to pretend that he was dead.
They didn't pretend he was dead, but they sent him away. But yeah, kind of like.
I thought he was a she.
No, Ishmael is a boy. But they sent him away to, kind of pretend like he's dead so that Isaac can get the firstborn inheritance. Because if Ishmael was there, Ishmael would have gotten it. And it's the same thing that happened with Jesus and us. God sent Jesus to death so that we could inherit the firstborn portion. And the way that he did it when Jesus came to earth is he was against his brothers. And who were his brothers that he was against?
The entire earth.
Not the entire earth. Who were his brothers?
The Pharisees.
The Pharisees. Those were they were his people. Those were his people, but also his literal brothers. Remember, at first James didn't believe in Jesus. His actual brothers came to get him, and they said, "Your mother and your brothers are here." And he said, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" Because they didn't realize who he was. So a lot of things that he said were
He didn't realize who he was.
His brothers at first. James didn't believe that he was the Messiah. That would be like if you grew up with Cruz all this time, and then Cruz was like, "By the way, I'm the Messiah." And you'd be like, "Okay, moving on, this crazy guy." But the things that he said kind of stood in opposition to what his people, the Israelites, believed. Okay, so we're going to stop. We didn't make it very far today because there's a lot to talk about with Hagar. I'm going to stop here at the bottom. It says, so Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. And we'll stop there at the bottom of page 16. All right, thanks for joining us. Sorry we couldn't do the video today. We will do it tomorrow. All right, bye.